Hello. I'm back with chapter 17. Summer progressed. While waiting for Gower Glacken's rescue crew, Abel kept busy, providing for himself, working on his art, doing whatever he could to be steadily occupied. He ate dandelion greens, birch bark, pigweed, wild onions, mushrooms, grass seed, watercress. He found that he liked burdock root very much, and when the strawberries turned red, he had them on his breath all day. He began to make sculptures of plants, and the more elaborate he made them, the more it distracted his mind. He took to drawing with bits of charcoal in the empty spaces on the pages of his bear novel, and he discovered that he could color his drawings by rubbing them with flower petals. He swam. He went on long, rambling walks. He kept his watch ticking, but all the time he never forgot that he was waiting for his rescuers. Either Gower would bring them, or Amanda, or both. He waited for weeks. No one came. Finally, he was achingly certain that Gower had forgotten him. He had surely succeeded in crossing the river, but somewhere along the watery way, his memory of a mouse named Abel had leached out. Abel looked at Gower's statue and had new insight into the mystical expression on his face. He realized that if Gower was not drilled into remembering the everyday world, it became a dream that faded from his mind as soon as he dwelled on the ultimate reality beyond it. If he remembered his family, well, that was because a family is the one thing that nobody can ever forget. Abel built fires to make smoke signals again and sent messages down the river on scraps from his book. In the hugging heat of July, he was struck with a new, most exciting possibility. For weeks, it had not rained, and the river looked a bit slower, a bit shallower. Could he possibly hope that the short dry spell would continue into a drawn-out drought? That the river would get low enough for him to risk swimming across? He would hope it, but he warned himself not to be too devastated if it didn't happen. He climbed up his cherry birch. He was still wearing Amanda's scarf. It was the only thing that he wore that was not in shreds. He had had to discard his shoes and socks some time ago. His necktie had been used to help hold up his hammock. He removed the scarf from his neck and let the birch feel its wispy softness. Then he fell to kissing it. He had avoided dwelling too much on Amanda, even while waiting for rescuers. Now she occupied his mind constantly. He could see her beautiful black eyes vividly. Dreaminess and vivacity, what a wonderful combination of qualities. How much her brisk, graceful bustling had enlivened his idle days. How often, when he'd been lying on the sofa at home, wondering what to make of his life, just her mere passing through the room had cheered him up. Even her scoldings he remembered now with pleasure. She had only meant him well. His whole being ached to be with her. He was glad the sun was so fierce and burning. He slept on the ground outside his log and was happy to wake up every morning to a bright, torrid day. The first thing he did upon wakening was to go look at the river. Its flow was clearly diminished. A few sandbars had become visible, and dry rocks showed that had previously been underwater. Here's a picture of what July looks like right now. Very dry. The sun is kind of like a very big presence. And he's very happy about that and hopes that it continues. The island was still green in spite of the drought, and it was green on the opposite shores of the river. But beyond, the green looked tarnished, and the tops of the distant wooded hills were turning brown. That dying vegetation gladdened Abel's heart. He woke up one morning in August to find the sky dark with clouds. A few drops of rain had fallen and been quickly absorbed by the dry ground. Abel ran to the river and looked up and down its length. It's now or never, he decided. He raced back to his yard, and addressing himself to Amanda's statue, he declared, "I'm coming home!" Then, entering his log, he looked around as if to etch forever in his memory this piece of dead tree that had been his haven. He lovingly caressed each of his sculptures. The ticking watch urged him not to tarry. He ran to the birch and pressed his face to the bark. The birch stood there and encouraged. He hurried to the river, to the tip of a small peninsula, and for one moment he turned to stare back and was filled with sudden anguish. The island had been his home for a full year. It had given him sustenance, guidance, warmth, like a parent. Something important had happened here. How could he help but love it? "Goodbye," he said. "I'll be back." And he waded into the water. There is Abel making a break for it because it is starting to rain. And that's not a good thing for him. He needs that river to be low. Let's see how long this one. Chapter 18. When the water was neck high, Abel flung himself forward and started swimming. He was carried downstream, but he made progress across too. It was still, for him, a strong current, but not like it was before. He swam with great resolve. He didn't mind the water engulfing him now and then, filling and hurting his nostrils. He snorted bravely when it did. He was at last actually doing what for weeks he had only been doing in his imagination. Fortunately, he was able to climb up on a rock after a while and rest there until his panting subsided. Here's a picture of that. So he's swimming, and then he found a rock in the middle, so he's resting on it. He was a quarter of the way over. Now he confronted the most challenging, the deepest part of the stream. He had to believe that he would be able to reach another rock to rest on. Having come so far, he felt his confidence swell. He was wiry strong after his rugged year in the wild. The Abel who was leaving was in far better shape in all ways than the Abel who had arrived in a hurricane, desperately clinging to a nail. He sucked his lungs full of air and threw himself into the water. Again, he was carried downstream, and again, he made crossways progress, stroking and kicking with power. He felt a minnow brush against his leg, and he exulted to be doing so well in the fish's own medium. He kept swimming, but soon he was overwhelmed by the water's swiftness. It tore and tumbled, and he was swung around like someone dragged against his will into a reckless dance. He just stopped swimming and lay with his arms and legs outstretched, face up to the heavens, and just let himself be carried along for a while. With a sudden thump, he again found a rock. Oh, blessed rock! He crawled up on it and rested on his back, his body heaving. It was very much as he had imagined that it would be, difficult. But he was mastering the river, and he felt that he was being guided. Alleluia! Light rain began to fall. But it didn't matter. Abel knew that he was equal to the rest of this task. He dived once more, a dozen strokes, and then his feet were touching the bottom. He was on a gravelly welt of raised riverbed. He walked across it, and without hesitating, he made his final easy swim. When at last he came out of the water and touched the shore he had been yearning toward for a whole round of a passing year, he experienced a burst of astounding joy. He laid on the longed-for ground, flooded with ecstatic feelings of triumph and well-being. Then he broke into uncontrollable laughter. He was a free mouse. In a while, he started upstream, walking along the bank where no tall grass obstructed the way. His thoughts were full of the future, but they were also full of the past. He was imagining ahead to Amanda, and beyond her to his family and his friends, in a renewed life in society that would include productive work, his art. but he was also remembering his year on the island, a unique and separate segment of his life that he was now glad that he had gone through, though he was also glad that it was over. As to what was to come, he began to be disturbed by vague apprehensions. What was he really walking toward? Would Amanda even be home? Had things changed during his year of exile? What if, believing that he was dead, she had married another mouse? Many mice had been in love with her. Or was she even alive? He had been in touch with her, but had he really been in touch? Or had he only imagined it? After much walking, he arrived at a spot opposite his island. He saw it for the first time from a far perspective. Here's a picture of Abel standing on the other side of the island, looking at the island, looking at the place where he lived for a whole year and was not able to get off until now. He embraced its wholeness. No wonder he loved it. It was beautiful. Through the rain, he saw his beloved birch tree and all the trees around it. These images would be his forever. Having no wish to dally, he continued steadily northward. When he climbed the steep hill alongside the waterfall, he was amazed that he had traveled over this cataract when it was much mightier and had actually survived. He had been through great ordeals, but here he was. Life surely meant him well, so he kept walking. If only the rain would end, if only for an hour. He felt the need to be dry. Eventually, he found shelter in a natural vault of jutting rock. He laid down and was instantly asleep. When he awoke, the moon was out, and a cat was staring him in the face. I'll be right back with the rest of that. Meow.